When I'm running offshore in the Gulf of Mexico, I'm pretty much staring at the depth finder the whole time. Because a lot of times you'll see fish shows, and then those will turn into holes that you want to come back to a lot of the time. So here's a spot in about 120 feet. This isn't what the video is going to be, but it's very similar to what you're looking for. So 4x zoom, so you can see tops about 103 feet, bottoms 120, 121. And this is stacks of fish. The bright reds is probably bigger fish. The lighter shades are bait. A lot of beeliners, cigar minnows, grunts, that type of thing. So when you see fish shows up 10, 15 feet off the bottom, a lot of times that'll be red snapper, the more aggressive ones coming up the water column. And so I like to kind of investigate, even if I'm going 35, 40 miles an hour. If I see something up off the bottom a little bit, that's something I want to come back around and check. So this video was one of those spots. So this was a show that we came back around and investigated one day. So GoPro's going down 115, 120 feet. So you can see up in the water column, this is all red snapper. Red snapper, red snapper. There's probably 30 or 40 right there. So hits the bottom. Red snapper kind of start to follow the camera. They're wondering what's going on. Just red snapper everywhere. Absolute cloud of them. So this time of year, or fall, summer, spring, when you're running off a little deeper, if you want to actually target red snapper, you'll see shows of them when you get past 100 feet. And if you're paying attention, you get back around on the spot. These fish eat instantly. If they're up in the water column, they're looking to feed. And there's some big fish in here. This is one of the reasons I like to use a lot of jig heads offshore is up in the water column, those bigger fish, like that fish right there in the back, that's probably a 15-pound red snapper. The smaller fish will hang out on the bottom, and they'll be a little more aggressive down on the bottom. The bigger fish will hang out up in the water column and will be a little more aggressive up in the water column. The smaller fish will also eat a lot of dead bait first, kind of bringing in fish from a distance. And, then you'll switch to live bait when you're starting to target some bigger red snapper. So bigger live bait, bigger dead bait as well. And so this spot ended up being a nice little honey hole we found. We were chumming up snapper. There were a bunch of amberjack, or I'm sorry, not chumming up snapper. We were chumming up tuna. And there were a bunch of amberjack around as well that we didn't really want to catch our season at this time. This was in late April. But the tuna were a lot of fun. There's a lot of bait around, and there's a couple other surprises that, will come in here in a second. Let me kind of fast forward, get through all these red snapper. So here's one of the things that's holding these fish. If you look closely, you can see a bunch of bait. Absolutely goes zooming by. This is all bait. So a lot of Spanish sardines, cigar minnows. There's a red snapper kind of chasing them. So I'll do that one more time. These offshore spots, you don't necessarily need a lot of structure, just a little bit of live bottom. So, grass, sea fans, corals, and whatnot. If there's bait, that's what will hold the fish. So one more time. This school of bait just goes flying by. So if you're looking at your depth finder, that's going to be some of those lighter blues. And behind that bait, all these red snapper are like, wow. Man, looking for a meal. So as I go forward a little more, off in the distance, what you'll see now, if you're looking in this area, hopefully you can see this fish right here, big gag grouper, one of them, two of them, and Goliath right there. So as well, following the bait and coming towards the boat, one gag grouper, two gag grouper. There might be another one right there that you don't get a good look at, and a big Goliath. So we don't really know what this bottom is. Couldn't see a whole lot. I have another GoPro video from nearby I'll show in a second. So Goliath comes, looks, he's gone. Gag grouper there, just kind of hangs out. Another one. So there's a couple real big gags. I think that's another little Goliath right there, as well as the big one that went off. So there's obviously some type of structure near this that we found that the red snapper stack gave away. The red snapper don't always sit right on the structure of where the fish are. So looks like a goliath there, kind of going up in the water column. Goliath there. Bunch of big fish. There's a gag over in there. So pretty amazing find. Something that, I look forward to going back when the red snapper season's open. When it's not open, it's a little bit of an annoyance when you're catching 2-3 dozen throwback red snapper, 10-15 pounds, because they're so aggressive. They will beat the grouper and everything else to the baits. If you're looking for just the gags, you need to drop a lot of big baits after you get the red snapper fired up. And that's one of the few ways you're going to get past red snapper is give them something so big they can't eat it, but they will try, especially when there's this many of them. So bait just went down. You can see they're chasing it and trying to eat it as it drops through the water column. So let's fast forward just a little bit more. So yeah, very surprising that the gags and the goliaths are in this sort of open-looking bottom. I'm guessing there's something, maybe a wreck nearby between the amberjack, the amount of bait, the amount of fish that we just couldn't find. We moved around a bunch on the spot, didn't see anything. There's an amberjack that just swam through. And those are all typically signs of a little more structure than just big flat open bottom. So amberjack there. But you'll see red snapper stacks just with a little bit of vegetation and a little bit of bait. There's so many of them out past that 110-foot mark. I mean, if you're going to 120, 130, 140 feet, these stacks are all over the place. Just loaded with red snapper right now. So more amberjack. Decent sized fish. Little red snapper. And more red snapper back in the background. Much like mangroves, they will eat up in the water column. They'll eat 20, 30 feet off the bottom. That's how you get a lot of the bigger ones. So there's a bait that just dropped there down in the middle of them. We actually stopped bottom fishing for them just because what we were getting were red snapper, and we'd kind of focused on the tuna when they were rolling through at that point. So I don't think the gags or goliaths making another appearance. Actually, maybe right at the end, if I recall correctly. Okay, so yeah, there's one right there. So I'm going to fast forward go through just a little bit. So that's another one of the big gags. You see kind of just hanging out in the background a little bit. And then right there as well as a gag kind of looking at the camera. Those are pretty big gags. You start to see that dark coloration on their bottom. That's when might be 15, 20 pound fish. A lot of big red snapper hanging out in the background as well. So you can see here, that's the gag, that dark spot on the bottom. That's when, start to call them rusty bellies when they get a little bigger. But these fish up in the water column, the red snapper off just in the distance, probably 20 pound fish. You can get some 20 pound red snapper, 120, 130 feet. It's not uncommon. They'll mix in with all these other ones. So here's GoPro going up. Amberjack. If you can see over here, there's a little bit darker bottom. I'm guessing that's some of the structure that the other fish were hanging on. So up in the water column, red snapper. That's a pretty big red snapper. That's an amberjack there. More red snapper up in the water column. And if you're using spinning tackle with, jig heads, knocker rigs, that type of thing, so much fun when they hit 20, 30 feet off the bottom, because you're going to get a vertical run up and down where the fish are running, straight down, and that's a lot of fun. So here, I believe, is the school of tuna we were catching. So you can see here, kind of got that fork tail shape off in the distance, so it's kind of hard to tell, but I think those are all tuna, just from what I've seen before, kind of that football shape, swimming real fast. So there's probably, 2 dozen tuna there. We caught 7 before we kind of left them. So here's a drop. We moved around a little bit. This is probably 100 yards away from that other spot. So there's one of the red snapper we were catching up in the surface. So GoPro's going down. Same thing here. I think those are tuna. Just kind of see them off in the distance a little bit. Amberjack. I think those are tuna. You get the football shape right there. Yeah, that's definitely a tuna right there. That's an amberjack. The amberjack you can kind of give away from that little stripe below their eye. You'll see the darkness. Okay, so now GoPro's getting down to the bottom. I think when we moved a little bit, we got away from some of those grouper. We can see here, this is what I believe a lot of people call Swiss cheese. It's just basically a big hole in the ground. There's another one there. There's another one there. And so Swiss cheese will just mean, there's a hole at 10, 20, 30 feet wide that's not real deep, but it's structure. Something for the fish to sit in. That's a little bit of rockiness. And it gives them a little bit of cover. So it hits the bottom here. More red snapper just flooding the camera from all around. So you can see looking ahead, there's that darkness around. There's a shark there. Don't know what type that is. I'm not a real shark expert. We didn't have any problems with the tuna. Normally, you start getting those tuna, you start bleeding them when they get in the boat. The sharks will come around and wreak a little havoc on there, but no problems there. So it's kind of more of the same. It looks just like big flat open bottom. The depth finder really gave away these red snapper. So the spot we'll definitely be going to here shortly when the season opens up. And these are probably, 8, 10 pound fish. Nothing real big. There's a lot of smaller fish mixed into 4 or 6 pounders, 4 to 6 pounders. Fish that would be legal. If you're looking to maximize your yield, you kind of let those smaller fish go and keep the bigger ones. Because a spot like this, you're going to get your limit. It's only 2 fish per person. You got 6, 8 guys on the boat. If you can just see how many red snapper are around, it's, 12, 16 fish. There's a lot more red snapper than that. None of these are undersize. They're all legal fish. And spots like this are all over the Gulf of Mexico, just loaded with red snapper right now. So it's kind of just more of the same. I just want to show this one just because it had some of that bottom that you could see out there. Come around to it one more time, maybe. So there's a shark going off in the distance. So just look for, those stacks, those shows of fish. As you're running offshore, this, if you see this, come back around to it. It's most likely red snapper when you're getting out past 100 feet. If you're on anchor and you see fish up in the water column like this, use jig heads, use knocker rigs, lighten up your tackle. Try to get some of those fish on the drop. It's a lot of fun. Spinning tackle, 30, 40, 50 pound gear. I use a lot of 30 pound gear, 40 pound leader. A lot of fun. And you get a lot of bigger red snapper that way too. If there's mangoes on the spot, you'll get a lot of mangoes. They're going to be more aggressive up in the water column than the red snapper even. So good luck, and you got red snapper season coming up soon. So find some of these spots, get your limit, get some fish. Thanks.